unforced error.
I have to say, your use of the word delicious to start your comments, and then you're saying that you're very satisfied. But, we are talking about a situation here where young women were abused.
Okay, I'm sure a lot of you are noticing there seems to be a lot more Democrat support for the whole Epstein story as far as trying to figure out the truth. Well, Scott Jennings recently on CNN called out Democrats for all of the sudden caring, while at the same time making a mockery of the victims and their situation.
You can see they highlighted it in red. When it was the highest, it was under Joe Biden.
And speaking of Democrats, an official Democrat page on X decided to post a chart in hopes of making Donald Trump look bad. It backfired so bad for the Democrats that they had to delete the post. So we're going to dig into a lot in this video. Now, before we start the video, make sure to please like the video. It's the #1 way you guys are helping this channel, but it also helps others see the videos as well. And I think people want to see what's going on with the Democrat Party posting embarrassing graphs of themselves.
The fact is, because of how he used this conspiracy theory to further solidify himself with his base, they're not going to buy whatever he says. So now he's got to produce some kind of smoking gun. And if there isn't one, nobody's going to believe it. So I'm just very satisfied by seeing him make such a huge unforced error.
I have to say, your use of the word delicious to start your comments, and then you're saying that you're very satisfied. But, we are talking about a situation here where young women were abused. This is a tragic case. Maxwell's in jail because she helped traffic the women. This is a very, very tragic case. I see Democrats and people on the left taking great political delight in this because they don't care one bit about the victims. They only started caring this about 5 minutes ago. They only started caring 5 minutes ago when it was a cudgel against Trump. So this kind of language where we just sort of laugh about the situation but forget the underlying issue, the victims here, to me, it's so.
Please leave your comments down below how you feel about what Scott Jennings had to say. Even internally within the Republican Party, there's a lot of friction. So the main argument coming from Republicans who are starting to notice that Democrats really seem to care about this case is that it's pinning Republicans against Trump, Republicans against Republicans, and that Democrats only really seem to care about this case in the context of making Donald Trump look bad. Meanwhile, there are literal victims who have been affected by all of this.
They were saying that all of these prices have gone up in 2025. That's what the headline read. But when you read the graph, the highest points were during Joe Biden's administration. And so this is the White House's response. You can see they highlighted it in red. When it was the highest, it was under Joe Biden.
Right. So they deleted it off. So obviously,
the Democrats deleted it.
Yeah, obviously an own goal by the Democratic Party. So, like, for example,
we will get back to Scott Jennings, but let's move on to this topic. If you're unaware, on X, formerly known as Twitter, there is literally a page called the Democrat Party. And for some reason, they thought this was a good idea to post, and it was on their page for like hours. This is how bad it is. The actual post is just Trump's America, and you're thinking, wow, this is gonna really look bad for Donald Trump. U.S. grocery prices reached record highs in 2025. When you look at the actual graph, the majority of the high prices belong to Joe Biden.
When you read the graph, the highest points were during Joe Biden's administration. And so this is the White House's response. You can see they highlighted it in red. When it was the highest, it was under Joe Biden.
And again, this was on the Democrat X page for like hours. I think about 2 to 3 hours. And all of the comments were, hey, what intern is about to get fired? Or I thought this was a meme page, not the actual Democrats page. And yes, they had to delete it because it makes Joe Biden and the Democrats look bad. Okay, now before we continue, make sure to please subscribe to my channel so I can give you guys more updates on things the Democrat Party posts and deletes, and some more Scott Jennings moments on CNN. Let's continue.
The First Amendment here, don't we, folks?
Yeah, I mean, they kind of get to eat their cake and have it too. They're like taking the money and then also knifing their parent company.
I mean, the lesson here is that if you're funny and you make money and people want to watch your show, you can do things. And if you're not funny and you're committed to partisan liberal hackery that's hemorrhaging viewers and is not profitable, then you can't do things. And
Okay, if you're unaware, the popular TV show South Park, they made fun of Donald Trump and they depicted him with Satan. They were making a mockery of the whole Stephen Colbert situation. However, leave your comments down below how you feel about this, because it looks like Republicans seem to be a lot more forgiving to South Park as opposed to Stephen Colbert, who just all he did was say he hates Donald Trump and made the show a more left-leaning show and not so much about actually being funny, but more of a mouthpiece for anybody who doesn't like Donald Trump. That's what Scott Jennings is referring to.
Yes, a few days ago, the left was convinced that Colbert was fired for political reasons. Obviously, this company is airing material that is not favorable to Donald Trump. It is objectively hilarious. I watch every episode of these guys and have for years. I think it's great. But
so you're cool with it?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
There you go.
Yes,
Even the AI image at the end.
it's exaggeration. It's cartoons.
That right there is more South Park than I've ever watched.
And honestly, there seems to be this weird dichotomy that's been invented that if you are a Republican, man, you just laughed at Donald Trump. How could you do that? Well, from a Republican's perspective, you could say the same thing to Democrats. How are you not noticing these differences? Or why are you laughing at the one person who's not even making fun of Democrats or your own party? And what's also interesting, on CNN, the polls even back up everything that's being said here.
Everyone's talking about it today. Look at the Google Trends. I mean, look, Donald Trump wants this to go away. He obviously hates South Park, but the American people are infatuated with the story. Look at this. Google Trends for South Park up 670% versus last week. It is the top topic searched with Donald Trump this afternoon. And I will note another person they one time put in bed with Satan was Saddam Hussein. Not exactly the comparison I think Donald Trump wants.
But that was
Okay, I don't even think that's the comparison South Park is trying to make. Now, stick with me in this clip because I think you'll realize this entire segment, or this idea that Republicans blindly just follow Donald Trump because he doesn't like South Park, watch and see the stats. All of this completely backfires, and I would actually argue this makes Republicans look good to be able to laugh at a show on television that makes fun of Republicans.
But who exactly is South Park talking to?
You know, I think one of the things that's so important to point out was that Stephen Colbert was despised by Republicans in this country. His net popularity rating was way underwater. But South Park is in this unique position. It doesn't just talk to Democrats, it actually talks to Republicans as well. Look at the net popularity rating with the GOP. South Park is actually on the positive side of the ledger compared to Stephen Colbert, who was way underwater at minus 35 points. South Park at this particular point running 37 points ahead of Stephen Colbert when it comes to the Republican Party.
Okay, these stats are terrible for Democrats. First things first, leave your comments down below if you even watch South Park. But number two, what this shows us is that the GOP, they like South Park, despite South Park making fun of GOP principles, like being a conservative, supporting Donald Trump, things like that. That is why Scott Jennings said South Park is allowed to make fun of things like that because they're actually funny. Meanwhile, when you look at Stephen Colbert's stats, the point that Scott Jennings is making is that, look, you isolated the audience so far left, you're not even funny enough to keep your job because it's so isolated, and you can even see the GOP, pretty much nobody's watching Stephen Colbert. And again, Democrats are arguing Stephen Colbert lost his job for political reasons. Meanwhile, Republicans are arguing, no, we can literally see the stats of how much money was lost, how you don't even have a GOP base that sometimes tunes in. That is why Stephen Colbert lost his job.
South Park at this particular point running 37 points ahead of Stephen Colbert when it comes to the Republican Party, and therefore last night might actually be talking to some Republicans.
Which is fascinating and actually goes to the point of the White House saying that it's a fourth-rate show. Not even a third, it was a fourth. They say that it hasn't been relevant for over 20 years. Tell us something we don't know.
I'll tell you a few things that you don't know, Aaron Burnett. First off, it is the longest running show in cable, at least among scripted shows. But more than that, obviously, we're in an era of streaming as well. And here's the thing that's so important. It's not just that South Park is the longest running. It's as successful in the streaming space. It is at this particular point a top 20 show on streaming, and that was before the season premiere. So I really would not be surprised if it jumps even further. I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the top 10, especially given all of the situations going on with this particular program. There's nothing more that comedy writers like more than a little bit of drama and a little bit of controversy.
And again, the point I'm also trying to make is Republicans don't necessarily care if Donald Trump likes a TV show or not. I think that's the number one thing that the critics of the GOP or anybody who doesn't like Donald Trump, there are Republicans out there who will blindly follow whoever is a Republican, but we live in a new day and age of information. You are allowed to have a choice no matter Democrat or Republican. So this notion of Donald Trump hates South Park, that means we're not going to watch South Park. That's just not the reality of things. But again, either way, I do think the stats look terrible for Democrats, because what this all comes down to is that Republicans are able to make their own choice, not blindly follow Donald Trump, but also Republicans can laugh at themselves.
I want to hear what you have to say.
Yes.
I yield to Scott.
I yield to my good friend Scott Jennings.
And this disingenuousness is what you need to know about the Democrats right now. The party's in the ditch.
It's our fault.
We have a
Because
fault.
you have
Got a full
Democrats.
block on that,
Because you
Scott.
got
Kids,
Democrats.
if you're interested in politics, watch this pivot.
You've got Democrats saying, we must release the files. Joe Biden had the files for 4 years. Not a single Democrat cared. And if Donald Trump were
He
in
didn't
it,
campaign on releasing the files.
and if Donald Trump,
Donald Trump did.
But these Democrats are acting like it's a national emergency, and they did nothing about it. If Donald Trump were in there, don't you think Joe Biden would have put? They had law enforcement chasing them all
I
over
think we
creation.
can all acknowledge.
Okay, please leave your comments down below how you feel about this. To be honest with you, what Scott Jennings is saying is true. However, this is not really a popular talking point from Republicans. There was never an expectation from the Biden administration to release these files. That is why Republicans voted for Donald Trump to now release these files. But I understand what Scott Jennings is trying to say. Again, please leave your comments down below.
Democrats are taking advantage of the situation in a political way. I mean, that does not seem like a contested thing. It's that the issue is
Now,
that
look, people legitimately have questions.
Yes.
Powerful people did do terrible things. I'm sure there are things in the files that cannot be released because of this. Well, would you want to have victims' names or child pornography?
Look, all that sort of
Probably
stuff.
not.
But
And that's the thing. This has become so political. We literally are forgetting this is a real case. We're now not into the conspiracy side of things. There's obviously some questionable aspects to the case, but this actually happened. People went to jail for it, victims spoke out, and now this has become a political clown show. And Scott does have some validity to his argument. Why not release the files if all of a sudden you guys care so much about the files?
I'm serious now. They said
You're a lawyer, by the way. Some of the stuff can't be released.
Hey, look, I don't want all the bad stuff released, but I am saying this: who's lying here? They said they had the stuff, they had them dead to rights. Donald Trump built up this huge pile of accusations, and now he's like David Copperfield, just trying to make them all disappear. Why? Why won't they just release the stuff that is not going to hurt children, but might help America?
Well, it sounds like that's what the president is saying. If you have things you can release it, and then explain why you can't release the rest. That's a legitimate point of view.
Okay, to say that Donald Trump is sick and tired of this story, and to be honest with you, again, in the Republican Party, the GOP, there are voters who are also tired of this story. Here's what Donald Trump had to say very recently, like hours from the time of me making this video.
Well, I don't want to talk about that. What I do want to say is that Todd is a great attorney, but you ought to be speaking about Larry Summers. You ought to be speaking about some of his friends that are hedge fund guys. They're all over the place. You ought to be speaking about Bill Clinton, who went to the island 28 times. I never went to the island.
Do you maintain you did not write a letter for Jeffrey Epstein's birthday?
I don't even know what they're talking about. Now, somebody could have written a letter and used my name, but that's happened a lot. All you have to do is take a look at the dossier, the fake dossier. Everything's fake with that administration. Everything's fake with the Democrats. Take a look at what they just found about the dossier. Everything is fake. They're a bunch of sick people. Where did you see the people laying outside?
Right across your door.
Yeah, so Donald Trump, not too happy. One thing I also want to point out, and I'm sure you guys are noticing this, the Trump administration currently seems to have no problem with pointing out other politicians and claiming what they've done is true. These are not just like put downs or making fun of politicians. These are huge accusations against former presidents, Obama, Biden, Clinton, things like that. So anyway, leave your comments down below how you feel about all of this. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you guys enjoy this new format of video. I used to do it a while ago, but I think it's good to have you guys interact and we can all sort of communicate together in the comments. Thank you so much for being here. God bless, and we'll see you all later.